Okay, welcome back to part two. Let's start painting this lovely water in here. And I suppose I'll start with a medium flat brush. Just give it a quick clean. So I jumped right on out to part two from part one, okay? I have all my paints the very same. Everything is still wet. I will, however, take a sip of coffee. And what I want to do is just let the background set slightly, okay? I want to leave this just stick a bit slightly to the board. I don't want to go right into this immediately with my brights. So I'm just going to leave this side a while and I'm going to come over here and focus on this. So we have some lovely water sort of turning down. I'm going to start making a nice mix of colour. I'll take some phthalo blue out of the tube and I'm going to take some phthalo blue, some white, some magenta. And I'm going to start with this colour. Let me just have a look now, okay? Yeah, that's a nice colour. I like that. It may look a bit vibrant right now, but this, again, is a base colour, okay? It's kind of the undercoat. And there will only be sort of bits of this popping through here and there, okay? So this is just to get a nice vibrancy into that wave. I'll take a little bit of magenta with some white. Mixing all this now again with the same brush, okay? Just going to come along the top, pop a little bit of that in. You can see the way I'm turning it down. So I'm already starting to create the form of the wave turning and coming in, all right? So I had that base color done. I'm now going to switch to a smaller brush. Give it a quick clean. And look, I've seen a comment, okay, on my page. And it was a very valid comment, actually, very good comment. And the person was saying, okay, it's going to be impossible to copy these tutorials exactly unless you have exactly the same brushes, the same surface, the same paints, and that is true to a certain extent, okay? But you could make a really, really good representation of a painting like this, even if you have slightly different quality paints. Different manufacturers would maybe mix the colours in slightly different ways. So a cadmium red might look slightly different in a Rembrandt, we'll say, for example, or something like that, and vice versa. Okay, so in general, they will be slightly different, only slightly different, and they might have different consistencies and so on. But look, all I can say is just use cheap flat brushes and a couple of pointy brushes, etc. These are just regular cheap flat brushes, okay? Nothing special. And just try your best. That's all you can do. But, you know, if I picked up a different type of paint, all right, and tried to paint this with different types of paints, different manufacturers, look, it probably looks slightly different, but I know I could probably get a fairly decent copy of this. I think it really comes down to the technique of what you're doing. The technique, it's all about the technique, okay? It doesn't matter what brushes you're using, it's about the technique that you're using. And I try to keep it simple, okay? I really do. I do try to keep it simple. Now, I'm going to start darkening some of this wave over here in this corner, okay? I'm taking some phthalo blue, little magenta, and a little black. And I'm just going to start popping in a couple of darks. It's a very dark, see that very dark, rich blue, like a royal blue. Let's get some more magenta. Maybe a hint of cadmium red as well, why not? Let's go to town. Very rich, dark, bluey, purpley blue. I'm just going to start putting in some darks here and there, okay? You can see my technique. I'm just flicking my brush downwards. It's all about really the technique for me. It's about how you're kind of holding your brush and how you're flicking the brush around. For me, that's much more important than having the same types of paints or the same types of brushes even, okay? Now, it does help to have these types of paints. I use Georgian oil paints. by Winton, Winsor and Newton. But I use Winsor and Newton and I use Georgian, which is from Doyler and Roney. Okay, so Georgian oil paints, really, they're my most popular paints that I would use. Look, I've used them since I was young, since I was very, very young and started painting. I just love the consistency. They're nice and thick. They hold their colour really well. And I've always used them. So I've become accustomed to these paints. I've learned to master how to mix these colours and how they interact with each other on the palette. That's all it is. It's about finding a paint that you like and sticking with it. Okay? The rest will come naturally. The technique will follow. But I would say try and master your technique, or try and master your paints first and your mixing. Try and become accustomed to your paints. And that really is the start. You've a lot of work done if you can just get to know your paints, really. For me, that's probably the most important part of painting. Get to know your paints. And you realise then how colours mix and how certain colours will go together nicely rather than other colours. I would say that's the most important part of it, okay? So I'm just putting in some darks here and there. Look, just creating a little bit of shape. I'm just going to now take a little brush, kind of a softish makeup brush. I'm just going to pull those together. Just want to soften these all together in a little curve, okay? Coming down in a little curve. Again, just creating the shape of the wave turning over. All right? Now I'm going to start putting in some darks, so some rocks. We have lots of rocks coming through over here, especially, don't we? So let's take some black and we go for some burnt sienna. Black and burnt sienna and a touch of cadmium red actually as well. I'm going for a nice reddy brown here, but a very dark reddy brown, okay? And I'm going to just first start putting in some rocks over like that. You see that? And I'll put in a couple more sort of at the bottom. You see, I'm just kind of making little shapes, general shapes. Burnt umber, burnt sienna, a little bit of cadmium red. Lots of thick paint, no thinners in this, okay? This is how we get this paint then to stick to this blue. And we'll sort of put a couple in here, like that, going up into the water, just sort of popping out then, you see. So this again is just the darker shades I'm doing. And this then just sort of, we kind of follow this along over here, don't we? Now, dry that brush. I'm then going to take some black, just black on its own. I'm going to start popping some black in here and there. Just picking up a little touch of the black. You can use a pointy brush for this as well now if you like, okay? It's absolutely fine. I just like using these little flats. I love little flat brushes because they give a lovely edge. They have lovely little sharp edges to them. Let's just pop a little bit down there. It's really to show a lot of movement going on at the bottom. That's really all it is, my friends. Now I'm going to clean that, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a very bright blue to go in between all of these, okay? Just to create some movement coming down. So I'm going to take some, let me get some magenta on my palette. I do apologize, I must just find my magenta. There's always one color that goes missing, isn't there? And it's very difficult to find it when you need it. There's always one. Where is my magenta gone? There it is. Always happens, doesn't it? The one colour you need you can't find. Right, I'm going to take a clean brush. I'll take some magenta, some phthalo blue, and some white. I'm not going pure white with any of this now, okay? It's a soft blue, but a warm blue. There's a kind of a pinky blue there. You understand what I mean? A little touch of magenta, it'll really just help warm the colour slightly. Let's take some of that, and these will be sort of the mid highlights. Okay? Now you'll see it'll start mixing with that dark brown colour, but that's fine. That will give us different shades of colour. A little bit more magenta in here. Okay, so you can see I'm picking up some of the browns, and that's helping. It's transferring some of the brown throughout the blue to give a more natural feeling, because you'll have little bits of the brown showing through the wave. You'll be able to see little bits of the brown through the white spray, all that kind of thing, okay? Now just clean your brush each time you're doing this. Just keep it nice and clean in between. A little bit more blue. Let's try a little bit more blue in here. And okay, we have a nice one coming across like that on top of there. So you can see I'm just slowly starting to build up my lights. Now I'm going to start going a little bit lighter. So simply more white. Phaylo blue and a bit more white. Clean the brush again. Pick up some more. And what I'm trying to achieve is cutting across in front of these rocks, okay? So I want to try and push the rocks back slightly. So in other words, you want a bit of a wave cutting in front of the rock to push it behind slightly, okay? Here, for example, okay? So you have a nice wave, a bit of water coming down there, and I want to push it back in front of the rock. And this again is really only the start of our building up, all right? As I was saying earlier, I want to really make a nice tutorial out of this. So I want to take my time. Okay, I'm just going to really take my time. There's no pressure whatsoever for us to be finishing this in an hour or 2 hours or whatever. Look, we can just take our time. You can see the way it's kind of mixing together now down here. Isn't that nice? It's just making a nice, very sort of a random effect. As you see, it's kind of softening together ever so slightly, isn't it? Just take a dry brush and just soften those down, creating a little bit of a curve in the water, and then swooping down here like this. Now you can see the way the brown and the blacks are being picked up by the colour. That creates a very natural effect down here, doesn't it? As if it's a shallow water, and you can see the water, you can see the rocks coming through under the water. So this is quickly just building it up ever so slowly. Now, if you want, you can put a tiny highlight here and there on some of the rocks. So I'm going to take a highlight colour for these, little sienna and some cadmium red. Maybe a touch of Naples yellow. And I just want to put a tiny hint of light catching some of these rocks, okay? Just here and there, just the tiniest little highlight. And then, after that reddy colour, take a little bit of Naples yellow with sienna. Remember, this is just thick paint, okay? There's no thinners in any of this. That tiny little touch of Naples yellow with sienna. here and there. And you can see I'm almost just being very random with this. Even just slight little dabs of colour here and there. It's really just to catch some light on these. Okay, now I'm going to refine some of my darks. I'm going to take some black and perhaps some burnt umber, but it's mostly black really. I just want to refine some of my darker parts of the rock over here, okay? I want them to really stand out. Let's get some black just on its own, look. Pick up little touch of the black with your pointy brush. And I'm just going to make those just stand out again, just that little bit. Just dark sides of some of them. You can see just little suggestions of really black sections of that rock popping through. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this now, but I really want to take my time and do this nice. I'm going to now start going for some really bright colours, okay? I'm going to take a medium round brush and I really want to pop some very bright colours onto this. White, almost pure white with a little touch of blue, okay? And I'm going to start putting some movement in here. See, I'm going to just take some phthalo blue with lots of white. And there's not much thinners in this really. Maybe a tiniest little touch, just to help soften the paint out. And I'm going to really now just focus on getting some nice blue, rich blue into this water coming down. And I'm not really looking at the reference photograph as such. I'm kind of doing it my own way, okay? I'm doing it the way I want to do it. So I'm going up here now and I'm going to put nice bright colour up on the top and then soften it down. Lots of thick paint. And you can really have some fun when doing this. You know, focusing on a small area like this is really a lot of fun because you learn so much about yourself as a painter. You pick up different little techniques all the time. You see, just kind of wiggling some lights through there. See how it's just starting to brighten up a bit. And I'm going to go really bright. Some Naples yellow, lots of white and a touch of sienna. Up on top where the sunlight is really catching some of these highlights. See where it's really catching some brights up on top. Now you could add a little touch of pink into this as well if you want. Okay, maybe a touch of magenta with lots of white. You could leave it, I like this, if you like, or you could just work away on this and take your time. I'm going to just take my palette knife. I feel it needs a bit of, something. It's just not kind of grabbing me. I'm going to just go and drag some paint down like this. Okay, creating a little curve. just sort of making the whole thing a little more, should we say, random? Would that be the word? A little more random, perhaps? And the knife as well, it just helps create that extra bit of shape. And we could finally, we could just take a small fan brush with some white, some Naples yellow, and we could just add a little touch of tiny bit of spray here and there. And that would, I think, just add a little something. And I'm going to leave it. So I'm fairly happy with that. I'm going to come across now and simply fill in. We'll do this section and we'll see then how we're going. Okay? But as I said, there's no rush whatsoever with this. You can take all the time you need. Sometimes I like just taking my time with a tutorial. Doesn't have to be rushed. I'm going to go with a nice warm colour for this. I'm going to start with, if you look at the reference photograph, there's a nice warm shade. It's a warm pink, isn't it? Sort of in the background in there, lurking away in the background, hiding. I'm taking magenta with Naples yellow, and I might take a touch of sienna. That's giving me a lovely pinky browny sort of a hue. That's the colour I'm looking for. I'm going to pop a little bit of that in, just here and there, particularly at the bottom, okay? This will kind of act slightly as the shading to this light colour. So you can see it's a pinky brown colour popping in here and there. And then what I'm going to do is start making a mauve. So a little magenta with some phaylo blue. And I'm going to start adding its slight purpley colour into it just here and there as well. These then are the darker shades. To create a nice realistic, well not realistic, but to create a nice wave like this, you need light and shade. I know a lot of times you would probably just put a load of white, but remember, the shadows are really, really important. They're what bring everything to life. Now, burnt umber with magenta. The shadows really bring the highlights to life, as far as I know. That's what I think. That's what seems to work for me. So you can see I'm kind of just popping a few shadows in here and there. Okay? That's my dark colours done. The next thing I'm going to do is start putting some bright colours in. I cleaned my brush, nice and clean. I'm going to take a lot of white. Come down here, let's take some Naples yellow with a hint of magenta, but it's mostly Naples yellow, okay? You can see, if you really look carefully at that bright, you can see it's a yellowy white, isn't it? Let's take some of this, load up your brush, and let's just go and dab. See how I'm just dabbing randomly? And I'm sort of softening that browny pinky colour then into the white as I go along. Okay, now I clean my brush again, go back in and pick up more. And don't worry if you're picking up some of the blue as well. Look, that's absolutely fine. I'm just trying to remember to clean my brush each time I do this. touch magenta into the yellow. See, we need to be careful with this yellowy white, because as soon as this starts mixing with that blue up in the background, it's going to start going a kind of a greeny colour. So we just need to be a little on the careful side when doing this. Just a little. But do remember to have some fun when doing this. Okay, come over here. So now you can see already we're starting to get some nice form on the water. This is just a very general technique, okay? This is just really sort of a filling in technique. I'll be adding proper structure to all of this now very soon. But I need to get some white. And I'm going to mix a soft blue for the highlight on the back here, okay? And I'm going to soften it in. Dab, 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 dab. You see that? That's all I'm doing. Dab, dab, dab. And I might take a little bit of that blue and suggest a little touch of it here and there. So I now have my general wave filled in. The next thing I'm going to do is perhaps start adding more structure to this with a slightly smaller brush. So let me find the brush now for this. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, okay? So I'm going to take a small flat brush and I'm going to get a nice dark shade. I'm going to mix a slightly dark shade. So I have my background colors more or less filled in. So I can have something now to work on, okay? So magenta, phaylo blue, and a touch of sienna, perhaps, tiny touch of sienna. I'm going to start putting in some of the darks and creating a little more structure, let's say. That's all I'm going to do. Now this may be slightly overcomplicated for a lot of viewers. What I would say to you is just try to simplify it yourself even. You know, you don't have to try and copy everything I'm doing exactly. But look, if you can get a nice impression of a nice little seascape like this, then that's fantastic. Get this back up here. So you can see now what I've done there. I put in some slightly darker sections. Now I'm going to get some really bright color. So again, naples yellow, titanium white, and tiniest hint of magenta. That gives me a beautiful warm pinky color. Okay. I'm going to start then putting in some lights on top of these. And what I do then is I soften it down into the shade. Look, softening it down. And it's about getting that shape, okay? The shape of the water, the way the water kind of folds over. And it may take a couple of tries now to get this right, but we'll just keep going, keep trying. I'm just trying to create the impression of different layers of water sort of turning in, okay? That's really all I'm trying to do. Now you could, if you want, to just go crazy and grab a palette knife. And I think I'd grab a palette knife as well. Why not? You could just grab a palette knife and go to town with this. Should we try it? I think we should. Let's get some Naples yellow and grab a palette knife. And let's go to town with this. You see the palette knife I'm using now? I think it's called a butterfly palette knife or something like that. I'm not sure about the names of different knives. If I like something, I use it. Let's take some of that colour, that lovely sunny sort of yellowy colour. And I want to create a nice splash up here now, okay? So I'm starting there and I'm going to just sort of flick it upwards into the sky. I won't overdo it for now. I'm just going to keep it just a little bit for now, and I'll finish it with my pointy brush. Okay? But look, we can dab and create some direction with the spray. Keep cleaning your knife. That's the most important part of all of this. Keep your knife clean. So now you can see it's starting to take a form. It's just slowly. This is something that you need to just take your time with. Build up the layers bit by bit by bit. I know a lot of people would want to just get it finished first time round. Look, I would say just try if you can, just to take your time. If you need to step back every now and then, just take a step back, go for a coffee or whatever, you know, just take your time. Try not to rush it and get it all finished very quickly. Because I think that's the mistake a lot of people make. They just rush into it. Now, I'm notorious for trying to finish paintings as I sit and paint. I love to try and finish them straight away. But with something like this, I think it's really nice just to sometimes stop, go for a coffee and come back. And you can get a better view of where you're going next. Okay? Now, let's create a little bit of movement with all of this. And this again now is really sort of the earlier, I suppose you could call it the earlier stages. You know, I will be using a fan brush with some of this as well. Because the fan brush will give you some beautiful techniques. And I just wanted to generalize the wave. You know, I didn't want to copy it exactly. For me, there's no fun in copying something exactly. I want to create my own unique painting. All right? I'm going to take some Naples yellow, titanium white. I think just those two colors together this time. And let's really create some nice bright spray with our fan brush. No thinners in this. And look, I'm going to just sort of go along and just very carefully, without trying to go too far, just going to start giving the impression of this going right up there into the sky, breaking off little tiny little splashes of water. So you can see then, you see, I'm going over some of the knife work with the fan brush, and that is helping to soften out some of the marks from the knife, you see. Now, if you feel you're happy enough, absolutely stop what you're doing, okay? If you feel like you've done what you wanted to do, you don't have to keep at it and at it and at it. Sometimes you can ruin a painting by going at it constantly. That can very easily happen. It happened to me plenty of times. You know, it's about knowing when to stop, when enough is enough. And that can be difficult. I just want to create some very bright colour just around the centre. Now, it's difficult to do when the paint is so wet. So what I would say is you could let it dry and then come back to it if you wish. Very gently, look, just teasing the paint across. Bit by bit. And I will probably strengthen some of these highlights later on. And maybe add a bit more shading and so on. But this is just a nice way of creating a big splash of a wave coming up. Now I'll take a small pointy brush and I might just add some of that with a small pointy brush as well. I'm going to go right up here into the sky with this. I just really want to push that right up. So you see, you can use a pointy brush for a lot of stuff as well. Come over here and pop a few up along here, just sort of a little couple of stray splashes of water. It's a very rough ocean, isn't it? This splash of wave coming down. It's very, very rough. Now I'm going to take a darker colour and I'm going to make a few of these in a shade, okay? So I'm taking some phthalo blue and magenta and I'm going to make a few of these in shade, a shade colour. I just want to add some more shading to some of this. Especially where it comes over here into the shadow side. Okay. I'm going to stop at that. I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to come down. I'm going to get a big brush now and just start filling in a lovely bluey purple here, okay? I'll come back to this later if I feel I need to. The problem is knowing when to stop. You can always go back to it and add more, but it's very difficult to take it off. That's what I would say. And most people will tell you that. It's difficult to take it off, but it's easy to put it on. So in that respect, I wouldn't overdo it too much, okay? Stay on the side of caution. Now a little bit of blue and a bit of white. I'm going to pop a lovely soft colour in here. Fill all of this in. Now again, I've forgotten completely about that section. I'm focusing on the bottom section. So I'm drawing my attention away from the wave and down to this part down here. Soften some of these down as you go. Excuse me. I forgot about my coffee. My coffee is nearly cold. And you can see, although this is a simple scene, okay, it's a splashing wave with some rocks and things like that. You know, you would assume it's a simple scene, but there is a lot to think about when painting something like this. I think anyway, there's a lot to think about. Colours, you know, your composition. But I like to do it in stages like this. It's just, I find it much easier to focus on one piece at a time. Soften that along here and there. Now I'm going to just go up on the right hand side ever so slightly with this slightly thicker colour. We get a bit of magenta in there. Pop a nice bit of magenta through there. Okay, now next I'm going to get some phaylo blue. Rich phaylo blue with some white. And I'm going to just start popping some of that here and there. Okay, it's just really to brighten up and show some of the highlighted water, that's all. Then we can go into some white. Mixing with that phaylo blue. And pop a little bit of white in there, just to create some movement in the water, that's all. We do have a lot of rocks around here as well, don't we? Now I'll stop and I'm going to stand back and I want to take a good look at that. I really want to go up higher with my splash. I think it's not high enough for me. I think it needs to go up that little bit higher, a bit more prominent. I'm going to just rise that up slightly into the sky, okay? It just, I feel, needs to go a bit higher and to make it just a little bit more prominent. Maybe take some of that shade colour, pop some shade into that up there. Very easy to overdo something like this, as I was saying, so I'm just going to be very careful. Don't want to go too much. Don't want to cover the entire sky with the wave, but I do want to make an impact. Okay, let's just keep going at a tiny bits at a time. It does kind of really come right over, doesn't it? In reality, on the photograph, you can see it comes right over very far. Just dab, 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 very quickly. I could probably use my sword brush for this as well, just to create lots of tiny little dots of paint. I just want to sort of transfer it across the canvas ever so slightly. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. That's pretty good. I'm happy enough with that. Now it's going to soften. So as I'm looking around, I can see little things that I want to just sort of add in. Down over here, I'm going to take some phaylo blue, little turpentine with white, and I'm just going to start adding a couple of ripples to create some flatness in the water, create the illusion that it's flat and there's lots going on. I'll be painting my rocks there now very soon, okay? Rocks, lovely rocks. A lot of people are asking me about painting rocks, you know, close-up ones, far away ones. So this will make a good tutorial for painting rocks, I think, I hope. You can never be sure how your painting is going to turn out, can you? You know, it's always, it's a hit and miss. Sometimes your paintings turn out fantastic, you know, so happy. Other times, they just turn out to be a right mess, don't they? So and again, that's what I love about painting, because each one is completely different. You don't know what you're going to end up with. You're looking at an empty canvas. You think to yourself, I wonder what's going to be on this canvas in 2 or 3 hours' time. That's what I love about painting. Very unpredictable, and you can change things as you're going along. Okay, time to start painting some rocks.